There we go. Cool.
Here we are. The Kairos party, Christmas party. So welcome everybody. Yeah, as promised, we're gonna give you an update regarding the development of the Kairos project. Project that started 5 years ago when I started to research into certain topics that I will show a bit now. And then recently, since a few months, really became a community project. So we build up a team of people. Some of them are here together with us, and they will show what they're working on. Yeah, so this is an update to the community so that you know what's happening, what's cooking in the project, and also you can see what to expect very soon, actually. So let me share my screen. So first of all, just really, let's take it from very far. We are vvvv users, okay? And vvvv is this visual live programming environment where you can create, it's a visual programming language, so you can create any sort of things. A lot of visual stuff, but not just that. Yeah, so it's an environment for programming, and the Kairos project is basically a library still made using this visual programming language. It's a library that we will be able to use within this vvvv tool. Yeah. And what is about this library? Well, my background, I'm a sound visual artist, so my necessity is to make audio-visual live shows, installations. So by using vvvv, I can program, I can make all these complex visuals plus sound visual systems. And one of the requirements, obviously, of my profession is to be able to control then these systems. So Kairos is a collection of tools, will be, and it's already a collection of tools that facilitate and help in to take control over any applications that we write, that we create within vvvv. So what does it mean to control your application? Well, we are used to operating so many softwares with certain paradigms, like timeline. When I say timeline, everyone knows what is a timeline, no? It's basically a tool that allows you to arrange over time, over one dimension, certain values, and allow you to interpolate between them. So allows you to create a narrative and a development, and then to control certain parameters using this approach. We are familiar with other kinds of control tools, like imagine Ableton Live, this, how's it called, arrangement view, or I don't know, I call it matrix, which is simply
session view.
Session view, that's a session view, okay. In the session view here in Ableton, we plug clips and we can trigger them, we can play them. And this is nothing more that probably we could imagine it, we could name it also a preset launcher, no? Where you define certain states and you record them. And this is just another way to control your system. And then there are other tools, like imagine if you take Premiere, the timeline in Premiere, it's something where you can compose on top of each other things and blend them together. So this is all about, no? Okay, when we have a system or when we make a system, we want to also be able to play with it and control it, timelining it, composing it. And Kairos is about this. It's just about this, really offering not only like specific tools, but most of the work actually of the last years was mainly to find the right principles and concepts, so to create like a framework on top of which we can build these high-level tools like timeline, compositor, metrics, or a state machine, or any sort of tool that you might imagine that you want to control something with, but that they share. That the key element is that they should share somehow a common language and a common set of features, so that they are really compatible with each other, and they're you can combine them together. No, so this is the goal, to really. This was the challenge actually of the last year, really finding the common principles, what's really crucial, what's essential of each of these domains and problem areas, and then finding a common solution for all them. And I think we found it. No, so I'm really happy. I guess it shows up. So this is the big picture. So then I can start talking about, okay, what's happening now. So until last August, I was the main developer of this, and I was working in collaboration with the vvvv team to, again, polish the concepts and making some of the core libraries that I will show you now. So to prepare all the building blocks now for this effort. In September, this September, I made a call to the community, VVV community, because I wanted to. I thought that the project was mature enough to be to be passed to a bigger team, and so I just called who was interested in the community to join, and we met in Berlin, and for a week. And we structured the project as a community project, which means that we created a proper GitHub space where we have the repository now, and then we structured somehow the infrastructure around it. Like we have a Miro board that you see here, where we all can work. Plus, some other things. And we planned during the week, we brainstormed a lot, as probably you can see from some parts of this Miro board, like really going through as a team, finding all the problematics, all the wishes and the to-dos. And we structured all these tasks into a project that we put into the GitHub space. So now we have all sort of tasks here correctly assigned to people. Obviously, it's a community project, and it's an open source library. It's completely open source. The cool thing is. Well, I'll show you later. We managed to have a page on Open Collective, so everyone can contribute also financially, can just sponsor the research. So yeah, I mean, it's an official community project now. So yeah, I guess at this point, I mean, this was September. After that, people got really busy with projects, and in October I jumped full time on this, on Kairos, and since then a few people also joined. Recently, Lazal joined, and so Sable. So I'll give you like an overview of what happened since then already, which is a lot. So. Let's briefly go through that. First of all, let me just say that Kairos is, okay, I kind of described generally what it is, what's the scope of it. But in order to achieve this high level of generalization and we had to really fine tune and extract the principles of every part of it, so to find common solutions. And out of this research that was, I think, that happened in the last years, we basically managed to create different libraries, each one dealing with a certain kind of topics, and then using all of them together, allow us to build Kairos. So this is really cool, because somehow some of them are really totally independent from Kairos, and they just focus on certain tasks, and you can use them independently from Kairos. They are completely independent nugets that you can install. So they're kind of orthogonal to Kairos research, which is really cool. And so, and I can show you briefly, like the one of the first and one of the simplest in the sense that the deepest building blocks is this VL.AlchemX library, which is dedicated to value synthesis, which means that giving like few values, you can synthesize a new value, like for example, interpolating between these inputs or blending them together, composing them together. And yeah, it's a completely independent library. Actually, I can even show you quickly. You can install it, and then you will find in the node browser of vvvv, you can find also some help patches already that you can open, and there is some descriptions. So this is really cool. Thanks to Sebe Squidi for making these help patches. And so it's really like a completely independent tool that already provides certain cool features. Yeah, just feel free to explore. Yeah, that's it. This tool was necessary, this library, and it's used by another library, which is called VL.LayerX. So LayerX basically makes use of AlchemX, but introduce the synthesis of values into another context, which basically is dimensionality. Introduce this concept of spaces that you can sample and that you can compose on top of each other. And so introduce new concepts, new clear identified concepts. And that's why it's something specific that we had to develop by itself as a dedicated library. And this library allows you to create basically graphs of compositional graphs, so that you can, compose on top of each other things that produce values and have complex results. I can also quickly show you something just to give you an idea, because this is, again, is somehow the core of what will be Kairos. So if we take, for example, this one of the main elements, main nodes of this this library is, for example, is the interpolator 1D. It's just a node that takes care of interpolating between multiple objects. In this case, they are keyframes. No, so now immediately you recognize already like some familiar concepts and keywords. Like we are really talking about having almost like a timeline here. No, so what's at the core of a track of a timeline? It's mainly just something that you can sample, no, like a space in which you put objects and you can sample and interpolate between them. And this is exactly what this library tackles. Now that the very essential point of an interpolator 1D, which is a timeline track. And it does, using this concept of layers and the possibility to combine them together. Here, as you see, I mean, we are basically nesting one of these tracks into a keyframe of another track. We will see. We will see. This was just to give you a little thing, and then obviously this library goes way beyond, because we have even. You can bring this concept to a bit more advanced scenarios like a 2D scenario where like the interpolator 1D for our timeline is just one dimensional, no? But you can extend this concept to 2D, and then you can have like something that you can sample in 2D and you can compose on top of each other. So I don't want to get too long here, but just to let you know, this LayerX was the next building block. Then obviously Kairos itself, and Kairos itself is mainly about like identifying parameters that we want to control and making sure that you can operate on collection of them, because a timeline is a collection of tracks, no? Each one representing a parameter. So then you need to clearly identify these parameters so that anywhere you consume this timeline, you can identify those tracks and what they refer to. Because these allow also to, for example, take two timelines and somehow make them interacting with each other, like nesting one inside each other, because each one carries all the information that we need to know what we are dealing with, no? What we are controlling. And thanks to that, we can then accordingly manage these parameters and align them and make sure that everything somehow snaps together properly. And Kairos is about that, really. And again, thanks to the fact that we isolated the problematics and they are clearly identified and developed, then it's really easy to nest, to develop actually new tools, for example, in Kairos, because everything is so generalized that creating a timeline is not that different from creating like a matrix, no? Or like, because the building blocks underneath are the same and the concepts are the same. So that's why I spent so much time in refining these concepts and finding the right key elements, because these are guarantees to us that we can very quickly expand this library and also help also to understand the library, you know. So yeah, this is cool. So yeah, this is what currently the repository consists of. Like there are different libraries hosted inside the same repository, Kairos repository. Each one of them will be a NuGet basically, and that you can install independently. So yeah, as I said, AlchemX, LayerX, Kairos Runtime. It's basically everything that is needed to run these Kairos tools. But if you don't need the UI to edit like a timeline or a compositor or a matrix, if you don't need that because you already created like everything that you need, and in your software you just want to run this timeline, you want to sample it and use it to control your application, you don't need to reference the UI at all, which is a completely different nugget. And so it's very light and doesn't bring any reference to visual libraries like Skia or ImGui. So yeah, that's why we split in this way. Kairos, VL.Kairos is the most common entry point to the library, the one that most of users will use, which basically reference all the other libraries. And when you reference Kairos, you will be able to just create timelines, edit them with the Kairos editor. So it's the complete toolbox. So what is this? Then yeah, there is also this other VL.BindX library that currently is in, we are making the specification that maybe Sebel will go into more detail later. This is a library that allows you to bind things together in VL, in vvvv, which is an essential feature when you want to, for example, create something rich that connects to, I don't know, via network to some OSC messages coming in, or you want to control something in your patch and you want to do it dynamically, indirectly, without connecting links. So it's a very hot topic and very cool. And someone from the others will just give you an update. So yeah. Sebe Skudi. If you want, you can just talk about the nuggets.
Yeah, sure. So today and over the last days, I've spent some time working on the DevOps stuff of the library, and now we have a working release pipeline for all the nugets. We just tested that, and the pipeline itself works, and now the idea is to make sure everything is packed properly and test the releases. But we've already released 2 stable nugets that you can use already, which are AlchemX and VL.LayerX. Work has been done on the documentation of AlchemX, and VL.LayerX is the next to have a proper documentation revamp. And I guess over the next day, we'll try to get stable releases. Maybe not stable, but at least making sure that all preview releases are working for the packages.
Yeah, so yeah. I would say for now we will have stable release for the inner building blocks libraries like AlchemX and VL.LayerX, which are really just they're done and they are ready to be used by anybody, and those are stable. But I'd like to release a preview release of Kairos as well, so for people to easily just install it and try out the UI, give feedback, you know. So expect it to happen like maybe tonight, I don't know, tomorrow.
Yeah.
Before Christmas. So cool. Then I guess I can share again my screen and just yeah, why not? So let me go bit into details regarding what happened. So AlchemX, since September, I worked with Sebastian and Elias. We reworked completely the core, like using these very cool features that they developed, the vvvv developers developed, which allows you to much easily instantiate instances using this adaptive mechanism. These start to be nerdy, I know. So, but just to let you know that there, yeah, we reworked a lot of stuff there, and now it's simpler, much faster, and so it's much readable, also much more readable the patch itself. So it's a really cool library to learn, also, no, for people to have a look and learn how to develop such a library, because it's very neat. VL.LayerX didn't got too much love, I have to say. I just cleaned up a bit of things, but it will I will mainly need to polish a bit more everything there, maybe extend certain things, but it's already usable, and there are some help patches. Many more will come, obviously. Kairos Runtime, I made sure I reworked some parts, generalizing again, so to be able to always thinking to, okay, this is just a timeline, but I want to go in a direction where I implement something that is meaningful in many other scenarios. So it was a good progress there. And then regarding Kairos, well, the main thing was the UI. So I was tempting. I don't know. I used to hate building UIs, but now I think that something clicked, and I really understood how to make proper UIs, and I'm very happy actually about it now. And I discovered so many things, like for example, now it's very neat architecture. So let me show you something. I'm talking since too long already. Let's see. Oh, there we go. We have a timeline here. Okay. Already fancy one, I have to say. But just to let you know, no, I focused on this timeline UI, and now, I mean, I understood that it's just another application. It's like the timeline itself, but it's a different application. So I'm using this model runtime approach, and using also like a synchronization mechanism. So I'm synchronizing this application to the timeline application up there. And every model, every UI somehow model that is basically a wrapper and augment the original model of the timeline, adding certain features and that are needed to then display a UI. But I'm very happy and to say that it's very, very neat now how it's made, and also that if you look into the patches, we have a UI for keyframes, and it's easy to extend and very flexible. So I'm very happy about it. And so yeah, so that's why I'm writing here model runtime pattern, and that is synchronized to the upstream application. And and then, yeah, we're using ImGui for certain UI elements, buttons and menus and pop-up. But then for complex elements like the track itself, we had to use Skia because ImGui is not advanced enough for certain kind of interaction or not customizable enough. So we created everything using Skia. We even managed to have a sort of instancing approach where we collect all similar elements of a UI and we draw them as a unique path, as a single path, no? So instead of having like a complete layer for each one of them, and this speeds up a lot. And so the problem was, okay, how do we interact with this complex UI that we made? No? And there were different options on the table. There was this editing framework that recently got updated, so it's possible to use it in VL. But that's probably one of the first projects that have been made in VL, and it was very old, not very flexible. And I'm talking about really, we need something like a library that allows us to grab objects, move them around, select them, transform them. So this is the interaction editing framework that I'm talking about. So we considered using that, the VL editing framework, but I wasn't happy with it. I don't know, I felt it wasn't enough. So I made a new library. So, and let me show you, because in the end, it's really just another completely independent library. And this is just the beginning. Let me close here everything. I name it Touchy. So this is, again, a NuGet that you can install. And it's a library that provides you functionalities for interaction. So allows you to interact with objects. And it's, so has a certain philosophy, which is more oriented towards gestures, which means that out of the box, you have multi-touch possibility. And, and again, I mean, I implemented some shapes already and some behaviors that you can plug in. It looks like Elementor in the way you build it, no? You build your scene. But this library is really just about the logic and the interaction, the interactivity. So it's not really about how you draw things, just allows you to handle these objects. And that's why it's cool to have this node set, because you can integrate it in other libraries, like I'm doing in Kairos. At the moment, the timeline UI has its own keyframes UI, but inside those, I'm using these primitive interactive objects so that I'm able to interact through these objects with my keyframes, for example. So, and if we look at the definition of this library, you see already that we have different categories like object, like each one of these is an object. We have features, like you can attach a tag to the object or whatever. Behavior, each one of these objects can have behaviors. And then we have gestures, like there are already many gestures, like pointer, like push, double push, or drag, whatever device, because this is the point of the library. I don't want to be forced and constrained to a single mouse interaction. I just want to have devices that provide push gestures so that, and the system and the architecture should manage all these gestures and make sense out of them. So yes, of course, I can have like a mouse that, that grab objects because they are movable, okay, with custom movable behaviors eventually, or like I can use also certain gestures to trigger like, certain logics. But also like I want to allow, any sort of inputs like multi-touch. For example, I don't have a multi-touch. I never had a multi-touch device when I developed this last week. So I made a simulator for that. And so as you see, I can simulate a finger that is dragging this, but at the same point, I can just grab as many as I want. Every point of this is like a gesture, like a touch. So as you see, you can have thousands of them, 100, and the objects can deal with multiple touches and make sense of them, okay? So yeah, this is somehow an interaction engine. And this is the core, the core that I'm using for timeline. But as I said, I made it so generic, and I just wanted to deal with this very generic subject. And currently there's also selection implemented, doesn't visualize here. I did it last week, so I didn't have time to prepare patches but point is that this is a starting point on top of which we can start develop many more complex interactions and like selection, multi-selection of different spaces. You see, this is a canvas, this is another canvas. And what I wanted to say, I don't remember. So yeah, for example, here, you see, this is a canvas, this guy. As soon as I connect, it's overable, suddenly it becomes overable, but I also want it to be movable. So now I can also move it. Well, obviously I'm writing the position constantly, doesn't help. So I can move it, this kind of simplicity. Yeah, what I wanted to say that this is so generic and so minimal and simple that this could eventually, if someone is interested, could become the new interaction engine of Elementa, for example. We could rebuild the logic of Elementa using this engine, and suddenly Elementa would be multi-touch, which would make sense maybe, because it would be the only library, UI library that we have in VL at that point that implements, that supports multi-touch properly. So yeah, it was quite painful, but also rewarding. So I'm kind of happy of this. So, and yeah, and then again, I going back here, I basically built this library so that we can, I started to implement it inside Kairos and having our timeline. So maybe let me just show you a bit more of the timeline. Let's go back there. Yes. So yeah, this is what you would expect when you start using Kairos. You can place timeline in your patch. And now we place it in the patches here that we have a composition editor here, but this would be will disappear, and this Kairos editor will be an extension of before, so that you can just select it from the menu and it will pop up, and then depending on which node you select, you can inspect them and modify them. So as you see here at the moment, we have 3 tracks. And each one of them have some simple keyframes, some more complex like live keyframes, where we can adjust the position, the duration, but the value is coming from the patch. And in this case, it's I think it's this guy, because as soon as I disconnect it, probably, yeah, it goes back to 0. So I'm creating visual values here. Imagine this could be like a sensor that in real time captures your hand position. And I'm feeding this into my timeline so that I can arrange over time. I can develop a show by inserting the live inputs into this narrative. And this was the key idea of this kind of keyframe. No, each keyframe, as you see, also have a duration. So because I can place it there and I say, okay, I like this keyframe, but I want it to like be, I don't know, 2 seconds long. So I can do that, or a normal keyframe. This one is another fancy kind of keyframe. It's a layer keyframe, which means layer points also to layer X, by the way. This is not a keyframe, like a live keyframe, where the value comes from the patch already. The patch creates something and give it to the keyframe. This is a function that we can call. So basically, still we can provide this function via pin. This one actually, this one is the function. Okay, but as the name says, this is just we are building a function. So it's not something that is created here and handed over like a value, but it's like a window. So when we sample the timeline, we enter into the space, we are sampling this space. So we are providing a time position where we are sampling. And in this case, we are using this sampling position to create a function, which is a noise, a Perlin noise. So it's really like something more interesting and complex as well. And in this case, you see that there's a strange interpolation, which is really cool, because this object has many interesting like sampling settings. No, the default is this one, clamp. So as you expect, like I want to go from this value to the first value that I encounter when I enter this space. But if you think about this object really as a window over another space, imagine that we have a window and behind there are the mountains, no? All the Alps there. But through the window, we just see a portion of it. Nevertheless, the Alps also continue beyond our wall, no? Even if we don't see them. So, and this sampling somehow allows us to, while we are sampling to this keyframe, we are interpolating to the value that could be behind this wall, no? So we are sampling to the function that is there anyway into this space. So which is really cool. And this, because you can start making interesting things like mirror. So as you see, it's like it's mirrors here, or it can be, I don't know, in wrap, depending on the length here. It's just and the same here. Eh? Look, this is even cool. Ah, look, and we zoom in. So come on, it starts to look professional at least. This timeline. Same here. This is a track which stores the type of the track is a vector2, which means that each keyframe is a vector2, which has 2 values, right? Same. These are like constant values that we can place in the patch. By the way, we can select each keyframe and we can adjust the values and independently. Well, this is an inspector that Elias provided, and through this one we can adjust all sorts of things. Everything in the the keyframes is accessible from here. This is a live value input, so same as the one that we saw up there, but this time the patch will provide a vector2 that is generated here, probably with a random whatever, something that we generate from there that ends up here in our timeline. These are 2 constant values that we place there, and this again is a function. It's a function that is getting generated here, I think, because if we multiply this, yeah, you see that the function changes there. We are building a new function, suddenly, not a different function. And the cool thing again, if we go to default settings, would be like that. No, this is what you probably expect. No, I wanna have my constant value keyframes, and then I want to interpolate using, by the way, a twin interpolation. In this case, maybe we go quintic, so it's more extreme. We go to the first values that we encounter through this function. But as we said, maybe let's keep the float. So let's interpolate to the function that is already happening through the space. No, in this way, we can have this kind of weird shapes. So this tool is not anymore just a timeline; it becomes like a design tool almost. Now that you can craft complex behaviors and values. So because then, if we go back there, we say, okay, we can change the kind of interpolation. You know, you can really get crazy with it. And yeah, same. This is for, like, for example, the default is the bound out. The outbound is clamp. But if I put float, no matter this is the last keyframe, but the function will continue after, no, when we sample it. Same for this one actually. If I put float, again, it will go float until we reach, you know, the other keyframe. So really cool stuff. And yeah, we will need same for the color. Look, this is fun. Float, and suddenly we have a function, a color function that we interpolate to this guy, which is maybe like a blue value. I don't know. This blue, whatever. So, and this is a keyframe. So colors are up there. We kept them. As you see that we kept the same principles, like same also visual elements. So the dashed areas are functions. These ones with vertical lines are the live value inputs that are coming from the patch. And this is a live value input, but we are feeding a constant color there. So, but you know, it's just coming from the patch. So we can generate a value there, like HSB with LFO. Very friendly value that is coming now through the patch. So everything that you select, you can edit it. This morning, I even started to do this. Boom. Our lovely Bezier, which is not working yet, like the function itself. We need to have a look, but you see, it's a Bezier in the end. I need to tweak the function. So we have Bezier interpolation as well. So yeah, this is what have been done so far, and like Lazal implemented a lot of stuff like collapsing tracks. You can always rescale them manually and then middle click on them to go back to one size default. And then we have fold everyone or unfold. Here, I mean, there are some placeholder things, but that gives you an idea of where the direction you will be able to save the file, all your settings and load. You can copy paste all the, like new track, for example. We want to have a new track. We say meetup track, and this is a vector 4. I create. And we have a meetup track here. So I create a new pin, new value, actually. So that this is the new keyframes are with default 0, but now I will change it the next days. So, but suddenly this is let's change interpolation to twin, to cubic. Okay, so it's just a float 4 track. Now, you know, we need to implement the like context menu to create different kinds of keyframes, whatever, but everything is so easy now to make. It's really easy. I would love to show you how easy to implement this stuff now. Then we have some node to. We can also collapse the inspector and bring it back. Preferences, where we can set some preferences of the timeline of, many placeholders, but also some functionalities there. We can enable, disable tracks, select, and also adjust the order of things. Like if we want to place them, it's growing up and feels really robust. I managed to optimize a lot also the interpolation and the visualization of the interpolation, so that everything is view dependent. So it's interpolated only if it's needed. To say, you might see also the resolution changing if I zoom out. So it's already exciting as a tool. And yeah, so what else? This is a timeline. It's in the making. We need to put some monitors here and the sampling of the timeline, so where you see the output. But in general, okay, this is the current state, and what to expect. Yeah, as I said, now there's a timeline, and the timeline, you can think about it like as a function, no? As something that you can eventually ask for a value out of it, no? In this case, usually we just provide a time position, and we get the values of all the tracks in that time position. But the timeline itself is just a very complex function, and I wanted to keep it like that. So I think I will make first of all, I didn't show you another example. This is the timeline, but there's this other one where I can it shows you two different timelines. Okay, this is the first one, timeline 1, and we insert this first timeline into the other one. So this one is the first one. You see, it's like I don't know, there's some nodes, some keyframes there, and this is the second one. Let me just zoom a bit in. So there's a composition, upstream composition here. This is a composition keyframe, okay? And this guy, when you create one of these, here, there's a composition tracks. When you create it, basically creates an input pin in the timeline where you can connect another composition. So every Kairos tool is a composition. So timeline is a composition. Matrix will be another composition. Compositor will be a composition. We still need to tweak the namings. Or the state machine will be another composition. So that's what I was saying. Thanks to the fact that there's a common grammar, common language, now it will be immediate, basically, to nest inside each other and combine the different logics that each one of them carries and brings in, combine these logics into a very complex way of dealing with data and controlling applications. So in this case, for example, look, I've got this composition. If I disconnect this timeline up there, everything disappears here, right? And there is just this placeholder that is saying, okay, we created a composition keyframe there, but there's nothing coming through there. So as soon as it connects this composition, then here, and that's the magic of Kairos, I would say, is that this timeline here recognizes what's available in the upstream, in the other timeline, the one that we are inserting here, and is extracting the relevant parts and injecting those parts into the local tracks. No? So here we see that the upstream timeline has these three tracks, and those tracks have the same names of some of these tracks, and that's why they get inserted into the same track, so that we can interpolate to them, like using maybe some fancy interpolation mechanism like this, no, where we interpolate this function here to the values that are coming from that timeline there. So when we are coming here, we are sampling that timeline up there. So in this sense, we are not just consuming the output of that timeline, but we are really extending the function of our timeline with the other timeline up there. So we are building a unique, we are extending this big function, which is really cool. So this was to say that, yeah, this already works, and we can just combine timelines inside each other. Yes, so going back to what I was saying now, everything is in the patch, like the editor are here, and they will go away and there will be a Kairos editor where will be even more advanced of this. We will make use of the ImGui docking mechanism so that you will be able to arrange as you like multiple timeline views with inspectors or other panels to really go in the direction of having a proper tool there. And there will be also one of the next nodes that will implement is a CompositionSampler, which is a node that you can put in your patch, and you can connect any composition to it. And it will be this node where we feed like a clock, for example, that provides a time where to sample. And through this node, we will be able to, for example, imagine this node will come with a custom UI because it becomes a sort of routing table. So through this node, we will see all the available tracks that are coming from the compositional graph, and we will be able to enable output pins from this node, or to bind, for example, certain of these parameters to, I don't know, a C or MIDI, so that we can send everywhere we want. We can send into our patch. We can use this track to write into a certain parameter of a data type instance that we have in our system. So this is like really where we consume all the composition that we build with Kairos. So that's something to expect very soon. I think that's it. I mean, I could talk endlessly and showing some more in-depth things regarding the UI. Like for example, now the one last thing is for now there is this collapse mode, and here we show it's nothing more than a smaller version of this, but the idea instead of that is to also represent the keyframe differently, so that you don't move them anymore vertically. You don't edit the values, but they becomes like really just key time markers, so that you can just arrange, you can move in time all these keyframes, which is quite a convenient thing for certain in certain scenarios. So yes, so I won't go into too much details. That's another video. So I guess I can just pass the I can ask maybe Elias if he wants to talk about the inspector, because this is a very exciting thing. And because it's not just a Kairos inspector, is way more than that. So I would mute myself now.
Yeah, but maybe leave it open, Nathan. Leave your screen open.
Okay.
Because it's much nicer to look at. I have nothing nice to look at, you know.
Oh, come on. I can't believe it.
Show it. It's fine.
Okay, so
no, I mean, very nice demo, Nathan. Really nice. I was not aware of the progress of the past days. Crazy, really nice.
Thanks. I'm working hard.
Yeah, looks like. Yeah, the inspector. I mean, it's ages on our agenda, and we finally somehow. I mean, Nathan and Kairos basically came up again like it's needed, and because when we were developing or when we were meeting in Berlin, it was about how to start this UI, and an inspector would be good because then you can, of course, skip a lot of special things because you can control everything in the inspector usually. So a general purpose inspector. But at some point, then it became also clear that we can do a cut there, a nice one, so that we can talk at one point about just a general object editor. And this is basically what you see. So the object editor is really just talking about, okay, I try to deal with any object you give me and try to represent it and make it usable in a general purpose way. And currently, this is still a little bit limited. The current state is that it basically opens up everything, which is clearly not what we want. That's, for example, we always see here that this ID in every keyframe he selected, which is something you would for sure want to hide. And maybe at some point, yeah, you want to change maybe the widgets which are in there. And these kind of things will be done through attributes. So the idea is that you can then, when we go in Kairos and we go to this keyframe, this model, which is behind this whole thing, that we can go there and say to certain things, display this one as another widget type, or just hide the ID completely, please. So these little things, these are they are all already prepared, but it's not there yet. But I'm just talking now how it should be. We're doing step by step here. Yes. So, and the thing is that this object editor is developed in ImGui, so it's basically in our department. It's not, so we moved it out from Kairos, and it must be, of course, our department, because long term we want to use it as well. So, so for us it would be very usable then for the node inspector, which everyone wishes for since ages. And we see here already that this inspector here is developed in Kairos itself, but in its core then it uses this object editor.
Shall I show it? Is there a...
Yeah, there's a stupid help badge, I think. Type just editor.
Editor.
No, just editor. Yeah, build a custom editor, the right one.
I know, sorry. Boom.
Yeah, it's really stupid. It's just this node. When you look to the left, it's this object editor. This is basically the main idea. If you look to the patch, and you can give it anything, and it, like I said, it tries to make sense out of it. And then we, of course, will have these use cases where you want to build your own editor for your own type. So maybe you're happy with everything, but for this special thing of yours, you want to have something special. And that should also be possible to extend this editor in any way you want. And I think we will just basically add feature after feature to this. So that's kind of the thinking. I mean, currently we are still at the basic levels, like today we just did how to deal with the floats and when does it commit to it. And maybe tomorrow it's about actually being able to edit spreads, and the day after it will be probably about adding attributes, so we can actually add these attributes to our thing. And yeah, kind of we move one step after another here. But it's already usable, so that's why we already built it into Kairos. We already saw he was using it all the time. It was working nicely.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So yeah.
Amazing.
I think we will, when it's presentable, or when it's really in a good state, we will of course write something about it in vvvv itself, and yeah, it will just get developed, get better over time. Finally, something to have and use. Because
around this, then you're building like an inspector, proper like node inspector.
Yeah, for vvvv itself. Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's the idea.
Where you can select the nodes and edit the pins, all that stuff. Yeah. Really, really cool. Cool. Well, there is another big topic, which is BindX. And I'm happy to leave the space to give my space to someone else. Who wants to talk about BindX?
Yeah, I will try to make some kind of an introduction, give you an overview, first of all. So the topic is covered by Sebastian and Gregor mainly, or also Bits Elias and Nathan are the thinking head behind, and I'm now the talking head. Let me quickly share my screen. Or no, maybe before I share the screen. So what is BindX and what is binding and everything. So if you look to the past and look, for example, at vvvv beta's timeline, there you figure out that the timeline was the node itself, like we also now have a node itself, and that node probably has some input pins, which is kind of new to the Kairos timeline. And in beta, if you remember, every track was then an output pin also, so that you then could use these values in your patch and noodle them around. That was kind of cool, but here we were thinking about maybe a more general approach. So what if you want to receive an OSC value and set that value at this keyframe, for example, or the other way around, output a track's value to your MIDI keyboard, or maybe even combine these, maybe glue a value from, I don't know, your custom device together with a value in the Kairos UI. And then while thinking about all of these kind of things, we discussed about certain things we want to avoid, certain tasks or functionalities that library can provide. And also, like in AlchemX and LayerX, maybe it's also a more general approach that helps to bind things together. And then the last thing I want to mention before I start the screen share is that there was this recent development of the channel idea, which is kind of a simplified observable you can think of, or yeah, things like that. So that is a great starting point, or a thing that probably a lot of BindX will be built around. Yeah, and then there was a bigger discussion of how to model this. So what is the mental model of all of these things? And what I show you here is what was then in these discussions named like the so-called middleman approach. So for example, you can think about this centerpiece, which represents one parameter now. Let it be the parameter my value. And so this my value might connect to several things, like it can receive a device input, it might be put to a device output. Because it's inside, it's just a channel, which is just an observable. You might use it like in this reactive word somewhere else in your project. So you can subscribe to it. Maybe you will also use this merge functionality of these channels. And there is these read parameter and write parameter. These are just other names for nodes you already know, namely S and R nodes. Like you want to send those values around in your patch and receive them. And that might also be used under the hood by UI systems, for example. And now on top of all of this, there is this Kairos, which also has like a double arrow. So of course, the idea is to do all this because we want to use it in Kairos and glue there the things together. Yeah, that was somehow the overview slide, and now comes the next kind of overview where we tried to paint a plan around all of these things to get clear about namings, what is a module, and so on. I will quickly go through it a bit. So maybe I try to explain first what is a module. So we have this idea of an I module, which, and you can, when I say the names, there might be a MIDI module, a OSC module, a TCP module. So I think you already got the idea that the libraries should be extendable by certain modules. Maybe even the user can add a module then at runtime at some point. But all of these modules have things in common. They are used to connect to devices, to receive and send values. So that is somehow the world of the modules. And then there is this world of the parameters. So of course you already have parameters by adding a track in the timeline and you gave it a name. But think about this like a layer on top of that. So imagine your keyframe and you say, okay, I want to invent a parameter named foo, and I want this keyframe to read from that parameter foo. So, and with this abstract parameter foo, that inside, so like when we go to specifications, we said, okay, a parameter holds its key and has a channel inside. And then it provides you two functions or two nodes, like a read parameter and a write parameter. That is here in this diagram is described in these read and write operations here. So think about it like you have your parameter foo, and then you can have a node like read parameter. You type in foo, the string or the name, and then you already have like a R node where you can use that value in your patch. But the same thing also works vice versa. So you can anywhere in your patch have a write parameter node. Then you name the parameter you want to write to, name it foo, connect your LFO to it. And that's an alternative way to bring your value into the parameter and then also into your timeline, for example. Yeah, and now the interesting thing is if you want to combine some modules with some parameters, and that is what in the end is called a binding. So, but maybe about a binding, there is this idea of having this enumeration type of a binding type. So you want to define if I connect my, I don't know, my TCP module to a value. Should the module send to the value? Should it receive from the value, or should it do both maybe? And that is a thing that these three arrows here should represent, that you connect modules like your MIDI server with your values. And regarding the implementation at the moment in the current development state or prototype, everything is modeled around a central registry. So this is the central data type that holds everything together, and that then later on will also be used to store everything, write it to disk and so on. So this registry basically holds two main lists, the list of parameters and the list of modules. And also here, or maybe a bit different in the modules, but also the list of bindings is part of that registry at some point. What you see on top of here is we called it node set and UI because it might end up in both. First being a node set developed, and with that node set we can later on develop a UI. And basically that node set or UI should manage the three things in the registry: the parameters, the bindings, and the modules. When thinking about it, is kind of simple. So for each of these lists, we want to add or remove things to it. What we grade out here is like the more complicated things, like renaming things, modifying things. They seem like trivial on first sight, but when you think about serialization, compatibility between several aspects or versions, they will quickly become kind of tedious. So the development will mainly focus on the black things here in the first place. Yeah, and then also we thought about a separation between BindX, which is which can be seen as a general thing that can be useful in VL in general. And then this left part is vib named BindX.Kairos. So that is the thing that glues together then or makes use of BindX in Kairos. So for example, in the Kairos UE, at some point you might select a keyframe and say, hey, this keyframe should read from the parameter foo or write to a parameter bar or things like that. So that is things the Kairos UE might be extended with. And also the Kairos runtime has to know about these things at some point, because, for example, for every keyframe, the information from which parameter this keyframe reads or writes to must be stored in the keyframe itself, so that it can be saved in the timeline itself, so that you can copy this information around with the timeline, with the keyframe, with the element you annotated or selected. I think I went through the overview of the architecture, of the idea of the architecture as its current state. Did I forget something? I mean, there is a lot of nitty-gritty details, but I think they are not useful for this overview. Maybe we now go to Sebastian's demo.
Yeah, maybe keep the slide open for a second. So,
sure.
Not sure. Did you mention that you can, for example, write from the patch a value into the parameter, and then the keyframe, yes, could read that value from the parameter, and then after sampling the timeline or the track of the timeline could write into another parameter that you then can read back from whatever patch, which would be then the output parameter, so to say, of the track. And there the reading back which would make sense. Yeah. Exactly. So but in a way, it's just using these write parameter and read parameter nodes that already come with BindX. So it's just one application of BindX. Okay, then let me share my screen and so it's still in an early stage, but I mean,
can you make it a bit bigger, just a little bit?
Yes, sure. It was just a few days ago when we had the last design meeting with or specification meeting, and so yeah, it's still in its early stage, but you can already. I have this little example page that tries to explain everything at once. So this is obviously not the way how help pages should look like, but so anyway, here, for example, we have a MIDI module. All of this could change, but that currently is the way to add a module into the system. Well, you just place the process node called MIDI module. There might be a UI later on, or maybe later on it's sufficient to just reference MIDI and the module already is there. But yeah, currently it felt like a good idea to have this node because you want to configure some things, and well, there could be a UI for that as well. But sometimes nodes are also quite nice because you can, you know, have some logic in your patch and feed these pins in a programmatic way. So for now, it's a process node, MIDI module, which just represents this one module. Okay, and here up there, for example, we created a binding on startup, which you know, connects the parameter named A with the MIDI module. And now here you can see it's in there, and it has something configured. I can just create at any time a new parameter to the system. And the parameters are this ideal world. You know, you could have parameters and read and write from to them just with these two nodes. The bindings and the modules are a little bit optional, you know. You could have a MIDI module, a TCP, whatever. But these are all optional, and the parameters, so to say, are the backbone of the system in a way that they represent something that you can name. And that was the first slide Sebo was showing. It's this idea that there's this with a parameter that has a name, which is basically just a channel, a value stream that you can read and write to or from. That this is sufficient to make up some idea in your head, and then connect. Being able to connect to that is then more or less cherry on top, but it's the most basic usage of BindX is to create a parameter and then read and write, and if it's error tolerant, it just says, okay, if it's not there, then it's not there. There's no exception popping up. It's just this node wasn't successful up to now. Now that I created the parameter, it is successful and I can read it back. So really basic stuff like that. Yeah, the MIDI module. So and then I can here I just wanted to show that there's a difference between creating the parameter and creating the binding. So I can create some parameter with a weird name here, and it should pop up here. Here I can see all the parameters that are there. It's currently my color and A are the parameters, and there's one module, the MIDI thing. And if I create a parameter, it shows up here. It's not sorted, it's some dictionary. So now I created the parameter, but creating a binding to a MIDI module is, yeah, this other idea, and it will now show up here. When I ask the MIDI module for all its bindings, I will see this parameter here. Whoa, what is this? Sorry, I'll try again. No, okay, I don't know what this. So for that, yeah, it's still in development. Well, didn't have that before. Maybe I'm using the wrong version. Well, let's see. So where am I? VindX. And there's also development happening in the regarding the UI. So if you think about Kairos and maybe you want to add or you want to read from a parameter and have the value right in your live keyframe. So basically BindX, in other words, it's about doing invisible links to different remote places in your patch. So I just want to link to my parameter, and then in this moment I say, okay, add binding, or the terminology is not completely clear yet, but okay, so add a binding to the parameter A. This window would pop up, would show me all the parameters that I can read from, and or I can create a parameter and a binding at the same time if I want to. Like I can just give it a name, select the MIDI channel. There's obviously stuff missing, like do you want to send a receive? Well, in the case of the keyframe, it's clear because obviously I want to read from it. I need a value in the keyframe, so maybe it's all right that this is missing this option, but there might be more settings, and now it's also available in this list of parameters. So this could be a pop-up dialog just showing up in the timeline. I could also refer to a existing parameter, which would then only add the binding because the parameter is already there. Which would make sense, for example, at the track output, where I want to say, well, the parameter might already be there, but I actually want to write it, whether or not it's new. It's just, I want to just, or I just want to send the value to me. Stuff like that. So that's in the early development phase, and yeah. Luckily now we have this ImGui library that somehow is used in all the new projects and all the new UI developments, and so yeah, it feels like it's somehow coming together, and also together with the inspector development, all of this feels really promising. And maybe the last thing is you could have a vvvv module in BindX that allows you to read and write IO boxes, which yeah, would just be another module in this system. Yeah.
Amazing.
And yeah, amazing development in the actual thing, the timeline. Bravo! I mean, this looks so good.
Yeah, I'm really happy with that. We are a whole year, and now we can share some of this effort. Really happy again about this community effort. And yeah, let me just quickly, well, first of all, let me just show you something else, which is the roadmap. Look at this. I just opened it. I'm not sure it's updated, but it's a roadmap. So this was the Kairos camp, where we somehow tackled certain things, mainly organizing the work. And then in October, November, December, what I've been mainly doing together with the help of others. And yeah, here we are, Christmas release. I was hoping to get there And we have a release somehow, because we will release LayerX, AlchemX, Touchy, and also Kairos as a preview release so that you can play with it. Really happy about this. And what's next? Well, it really depends how much resources we have as well, and how much I can dedicate to this. So this is an optimistic view. And the way I see it, considering vacation and in January or whatever, I would say January will be focused on refining the timeline, adding all the missing bits to it, having also this composition sampler, which is crucial, like the entry point to the Kairos world. Maybe adding some features like ImGui docking system so that you can rearrange your Kairos editor as you like. You know, can get really, really nice. Having clocks and for controlling timelines and protocols, saving to disk, undo, redo, making sure that we have all the details that we want for the timeline. And then at the end of January, we could release a new nugget with the finalized timeline. And then, yes, it looks optimistic, but I have to say that, and I would love to show you, maybe we should have another session together, because it's remarkable how all the concepts and how all these libraries are so elegant in the way they just deal with what they concern about. So, and this allows to modularize drastically your libraries. And therefore, it's so easy to extend it and quick. Believe me, it's insane. Like to make a new Kairos, advanced Kairos tool, like a matrix, is not much effort, really. It would take even less than a month. So it also depends how much people can work in it. And that's why it's connected also to this insane amount of work that we have been doing, mainly for free, which is not really sustainable. I would love to find a way to really consider this as like a community project, but also financially, like a proper everyone, all the studios, all the individuals, we're all professionals and we care about the tools that we use. And we can't compete with huge giants. So the only way to compete really is to share as much as possible, and share also in terms of resources, I believe. That's why I made this a community project. Otherwise, I could have developed it by myself and use it just by myself. But I really truly believe that sharing knowledge is the only way to survive in nowadays and to thrive as well. But coming back to here, in my vision, I would like to finish the timeline, jumping on the compositor. That I don't know if you're familiar with the old NuGet, like the prototype that is out since a couple of years. There was this already the compositor now, like Premiere timeline sort of tool, and it's pretty like LayerX already have all the implementations for the nodes that are required. So it would be just about building the compositor node, which is, it's astonishing. It would be so easy and fast. The most time-consuming part would be the UI. But at this point, I'm quite confident that it wouldn't take too much time because I can reuse so many things from the timeline. And then it will be about making the matrix in March eventually, which matrix by matrix, I mean the preset launcher, which will be very advanced because it takes advantage of certain features like interpolation, so that you can launch preset, but you can also interpolate between them while you launch them. This kind of crazy things, or override certain parts of them. And then I have to say that the state machine is also very cool and is needed, like having a tool where you can organize and structure your system by thinking of states and building logic that goes through states, and each state can then point to another Kairos composition, which might be a timeline or like a preset launcher or whatever. Keep in mind that you can nest inside each other all these tools, so they can really structure freely the way you want to control your system. So it's very powerful regarding this. So this is my very optimistic roadmap. Depends, again, as I said, depends from the resources that we will have, which points also back to the Open Collective page, the Kairos Research Lab. I'm very happy that we managed to be accepted on the open source collective, or on the Open Collective platform, and here you can see some information. I need to update a bit this, but you can also become a financial contributor, which is really helpful for us, like just even maintaining costs, or I want to thank all of the contributors that already put something and help. It really matters. It really means a lot, especially like considering the amount of time that we spent on this, and just means a lot. So, but also on this page, we will update, like this Christmas community update is here already. I probably will publish the video that we recorded here tonight. But yeah, and it's really cool, this Open Collective. You might know about it. You can have the clear overview of the budget and everything. There's some sort of blog post. Really cool. So I don't know what to say. I'll just leave you with this. This is the roadmap. We really believe in this. And as you notice, as you saw, it's crazy how exciting things are snapping together. And I truly believe that this will change the way we work before forever. This collection of tools that they're coming now, it's going to really change everything. So I don't know. I'm really excited, and I hope you're excited as well. And feel free to contribute as you can, as you want, like financially, or just joining the development if you have time and you feel that you can help in some way. And believe me, there are so many things, like just even making help patches is a job, just that, and it's needed because we care for all these libraries as building blocks, independent libraries that everyone can use independently. And I think that I truly believe in this principle. And so let's make nice documentation for them. And documentation is a big part of a community project. So yeah, I don't know, just happy, and I hope you're excited as well. And this was the update. Now, I would say I'll just, I don't know, is there any question? Let's just give some space to users. And yeah. Feel free to ask any question.
I have a question. Will it be possible to record stuff in it? There's a lot about generating stuff and stuff like that, but imagine someone with a Kinect and you can record the dance moves and stuff like that.
Yes. If the way I'm gonna address this is like that you can enter in record mode, for example, in the timeline, and then while the time is passing, then some tracks are are listening maybe to certain parameters, for example. No, so then you could have a certain kind of keyframes that if some value comes in, they just record the values. So then it becomes really like a clip that you have in your timeline together with the other keyframes, and it's just one of those elements. Yeah, it's totally possible. It's totally doable. Yeah.
Way back in September, when I was part of the meeting, or when I was asking about stuff and coming up with ideas, I also talked about integrating audio, so that if you have an audio clip that you want to do stuff with, can you have a waveform in there?
Yeah, I didn't mention because it's just obvious to me, but maybe it's easy to refresh everybody that Kairos comes with this very connected to all the features of VL itself, and we're making use of those features. And so it's super easy to define any sort of type of values in Kairos. Like you might want to have, imagine that you have a very custom data type that you made in your project. You could even register that so that you can have tracks of your type. And so it's very flexible. And obviously, out of the box, we're going to implement all of the types that come with VL. Plus, I'm planning to create custom nuggets to extend, like, I don't know, like Kairos.Skia, where we register like tracks of layer, for example, because you can have a track which hosts layers. You can just put Skia patches and they get eventually interpolated between them if you provide also the certain functionality for that. And not only that, we can have, you can have stride scenes. You can have a track with stride scenes, and you can have each keyframe is a stride scene, and you can interpolate between them eventually. No, if you can really imagine everything. And obviously, we will have all the common types like texture. Imagine just implementing texture means that in your timeline or in all your Kairos tools, you can deal with texture. Which means that you can have you can have keyframes which are shaders, for example, and you can interpolate to these functions. There are shaders, and but in general, you can play videos. No, you can because in the end, what matters is that the type of the track is texture. So everything that produces textures can contribute to this track. Same with audio. We have VL audio. Why not to implement an audio type so that you can place there like a sort of clip with an audio file, and then maybe you can interpolate to a live audio value or keyframe where you feed live audio into it. You know, you can interpolate to it, or you can compose it on top of each other. Suddenly, yeah, I mean, forget about Premiere, forget. No, because really you can do so many things if you start thinking every type, what kind of scenarios you can open. No, so audio, like also MIDI tracks. You could have, no. This, it's obvious, and it comes out of the box just because we nicely tied up and cleaned up and isolated all the principles. Now they are combinatory, like they really we can expand so easily. So yeah, there will be all these fancy types that we are used to. You could have like I don't know, a skeleton type if you want, where you see your figure jumping and into your track. So it's crazy. I think that's what I'm saying. This will change forever the way we work and control things in VL. And even myself, that I spent like the last 4 years reading on this, I'm not aware of all the options that we will see. Also because so far, we just talked about one timeline, but imagine when we are extending all these features to other tools like a 2D timeline, like any sort of way to deal with different dimensionalities, and it's insane. It's insane. So I'm really curious, and we don't know yet all the tools and all the possibilities, creative possibilities that we. Just the other day, I was implementing this sampling technique for the function that I show you, know, the layer. And just that, you could spend hours. I could just give an entire workshop just about this. How just simply playing with the interpolation and sampling technique of a clip, this becomes like a creative tool. And it's not obvious. And there is so much potential in each part that when you bring it together, it will take years really to explore the possibilities. So really exciting. questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I just saw we had 2 new contributors on the Open Collective page.
Ah,
So
wow.
big thanks to them.
Thanks. It means a lot, as I said. I really appreciate it. Easy.
I think that was a very good question because from the audience.
It was just
start from the beginning. Like,
it was pure
awesome
love.
stuff.
To me,
Yes.
it was pure love. So
It is definitely.
it's-
Hi, Matthias. Good to have you here. We don't see you, but it's nice to have you as well. I need to say that there are a lot happening actually, and I'm very happy that things are getting together. One question that I have is like, are you is there something that you would let the users try out and report on some parts, or do you prefer development going further a bit more, and then at some point, I don't know, like, do you want to involve users with receiving feedbacks? Because, you know, like, one thing that's pretty exciting is like dealing with custom data types, of course, as Sunab also was looking into as well. So how are things looking like? When do the users expect to just get their hands on and try things out in something like some sort of relatively stable way?
So as I said, it's a collection of libraries. Some of them, we just released them today as stable nugets that you can already install and play around with.
Today,
yeah, like AlchemX, LayerX, VL.Touchy, they are already like stable, and you can install that like NuGet installed, and you can just play around with them. As I said, I really want to release also, make a pre-release of Kairos, either tonight or like in the next couple of days. Even though it's not like, let's say, a usable tool, because there's this missing part which uses the timeline and samples it. Still, there's a lot of feedback that I'd like to have from everybody regarding the UI, because it's such an important part of the project as well. So that's why I want to release this NuGet, so everyone can just play with it and just report bugs or feature that, to make a wish list. It would be really cool. So yeah, that's my plan.
Yeah, that's the point of the pre-release. So
yeah, exactly.
It's not stable yet. Just bring reports.
And then, as I said, the next thing to me is to make this CompositionSampler node literally in the next weeks, so that by that moment you will also be able to use the timeline. They just provide a clock and eventually have the output pins, so to make use of it as a proper timeline.
Yeah, and two other things that I see that in parallel to Kairos is like Kairos is also bringing them, like, what do they say? Like, you buy this, you take 2 of the others as well. So one of them is, I think it's going to be the inspector. Elias, is there any, I don't know, soonish time that people could just use this inspector not only in Kairos but also in everyday?
It's already in ImGui. So if you download the current preview, it's already in there. And it was already in there before. It's just now was rewritten, so it's extendable. But yeah, I just realized this before we started this meetup, that I probably will change something the way how it's gonna be set up, because there's still forget about it. But it's probably something will still change. So imagine it's a preview, but the object editor itself will not change. It's just about when you register your own, which is probably not what you want to do in the first place anyways. So
yeah. And good. So the other question is about Touchy, the Touchy library, which is okay. I remember we had this conversation when we were in the Kairos camp, that we were working with this Bezier stuff, and you were like, yeah, I don't know. And I think from that I don't know, this Touchy library came in. We were talking about the editing frameworks. which is funny.
You know, I like to do things from scratch, you know.
Yes, it is a touchy subject, Suna says. So a question would be that, does that mean that Touchy would be a savior for savior? Not what I mean, like it would be something that brings up the market for Elementa, like it does that because one thing that Elementor doesn't have is like you cannot really do it on touch screen. So you have it mouse and that's it. Do you think Touch is going to save Elementor?
I would say so. I mean, you know, it's a multi-touch gesture-based interactive framework, and it could easily be the new interaction engine for Elementa. Easily, you know,
Yeah, I see
someone named
Sebas is giving one of those smiles
should just implement it inside Elementa. But then, yeah, of course, for sure, it will. I mean, it would improve a lot and give more meaning to Elementa, which it will be at that point the only UI framework that supports multi-touch in VL.
Yeah.
So it could revamp it. Yeah.
One question about Touchy is what is the input? What I feed into it? Is it tied to Skia or is it completely?
No. I'm using Skia only for notification.
Okay.
I mean, this is what you probably.
I'm asking this question actually. I think they are sort of important, you know, like one with the inspector, because good thing is the inspector is going to be there anyways, right? So inspector has its own development from the developers, and then we are using the same inspector that is in Kairos, same as everywhere else. But then talking about Touchy is like, I also know that their editing frameworks are getting some rework by Anton recently, or also the others. But then are they two different things, like the editing frameworks in VL and the Touchy, or at some point eventually they're going to be sort of the same thing, you know?
Well, if you ask me, they're the same thing. And this is just the way you would operate on things. But maybe, I don't know. I mean, I just did this 2D interactive thing, but the concept and the principles of it could be extended to 3D as well, no? So, and I don't know. It looks like it's generic enough to offer, yeah, to be like an editing framework for different scenarios. So I don't know. Maybe this is something we need to discuss also with the developers, the VVV team, and I think I don't know. I believe in it. I think it could be like another research and project that can go in that direction and be the next editing framework that supports also, you know, all sort of input devices. I don't know. I just did it because I need it now for the timeline.
I see. Cool. Any other question or remarks from the audience?
I have one question again, also somehow related to audio, but in more general terms, can the timeline run at different frame rates for different data types?
There's no really a frame rate. A timeline itself is just a function, right? It's something that is organized over time, and you place keyframe there, but it's just a space, a one-dimensional space, no? And it's about how you sample that space. So, for example, if we can sample it using a clock that 60 times per second, just step through time and sample. Okay, give me a new value in this time position. Give me a new value in this time position, and so on, so on. So it's really about how the consumer consume this function, and in that case, you can really implement all sorts of things, because it's really about how you sample this function, and then there you could sample it 1,000 times per second, or just 2 times per second, or maybe even differentiating per track. You could sample a different frequency. So yeah, there's a lot of freedom in there.
Yeah, but
Shall
more
I-
of to yeah, but to rephrase the question, an example would be to, if you have some audio parameters, you would like to have a high sample frame rate for that, so that you don't get stair stepping while tweaking a filter, for instance, and then you have something else, like you have a counter or something of counting people coming in somewhere, whatever, where you only need an update once a second, for instance, but you'd like to have your UI or the control of the audio
As I
stuff.
said, it's really about how you sample this big function. It's not about the function itself, this timeline itself. So we can build these consumer nodes with a lot of freedom. And yeah, we could sample differently with different methods.
Cool. So
super amazing, Nathan. I just wanted to say I'm speechless. It looks so beautiful. It's so beautifully thought of. Yeah, just amazing, amazing.
Thanks, Randall. Well, you are part of the team, so.
Randall, you're also pictureless today, which is, we miss you.
Apologies for that.
Yeah,
We miss you.
he's on the beach with a cocktail and doesn't want to.
I'm sure. Cool. I would say if there is no any other question, we could wrap it or
Wrap it up. Yeah, I guess. So, yeah, then let's wrap it up.
yeah.
So,
Thanks so much, Nathan.
thanks a lot to everybody.
Yeah,
Really.
thanks to everybody who is doing all the heavy liftings, and also those people that they're contributing financially, morally, mentally, and also thanks to the Node Institute for again lending us our infrastructure. Yeah, last words, Nathan.
I don't know. Thanks so much again to everybody, to all the people involved actively, and yeah, let's just do it. This is not a Nike thing, but yeah, let's do it. It's here. It's already happening. Just support it, and you will see. This will really change everything. I'm pretty sure. So let's just do it.
Okay.
Well done, cool. Stay tuned for more news on the Kairos channel, or in the VVV channel, or on the open source collective channel, or all the other channels, and keep patching and keep contributing to the Kairos however you can. And it was very nice to see you, perhaps for the last time in this year, and we're looking forward to see you next year. And we wish you a very, very pleasant holidays and happy news coming up. Enjoy yourselves, take a lot of care, and see you very soon. Have a good one.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.